Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Impact Moto. Today we have a 2019 KTM 690 Enduro R. And I'm happy to say that I picked this up yesterday. Today is the first ride on it, but so far I've done probably 5 miles or so of this kind of bigger rock chunk gravel road and about 10 miles of pavement. Enjoying it. Got a few things I'd like to do to it. First off is the skid plate. Needs to be a little beefier. Prefer to have the full coverage around the side for the side cover plates. Also, these Fastway hand guards, they look good, but then you realize that the levers are hanging out below the actual protective thing. So if you go down, you're still just as likely to bust a lever. And the bummer with this is that it's let's see if I can show you. Oh, I gotta be careful about my angle, but whatever. If you can't see, deal with it. Right there, it's a hydraulic clutch, so there's no zip tying things to the cable. If the lever breaks off and yanking the cable with a stick or something, now you're screwed. So those things have got to go. Didn't know if I'd like this windshield, tiny little thing, but I think I do. It doesn't block much wind on my chest. It's hitting me still just above the belly button, wind is, but not too bad. It's got Outback Motor Tech, crash bars here. Somebody put a rack on the back already, so that's good. 2,300 something miles on it, and a seat concept seat already. So right now, I'm definitely still just kind of getting used to it, but she's got some power. Definitely not the XRL, but it definitely reminds you what the XRL can do and what it's really meant for. This thing takes focus to drive in the way that the Africa Twin did when I rode it on the Washington State BDR. There's a certain amount of focus you have to have when you're commanding 100 horsepower on dirt roads. This thing is 74 horsepower, but it's a lot lighter. I think its dry weight is like 320 something. A lot lighter than the 650. I bet though by the time it's all loaded down with gear for a long trip, it's going to be about the perfect light adventure bike for me. We'll talk about some of the goodies on this thing. It's got traction control and it's got on and off road ABS and different settings, so we might run through that. As usual, I'm not the guy to rattle off the spec sheet. That's everywhere. So I'll just give you my impressions, what I like, what I don't like, and plans for the bike and so on. Last bit that I already purchased these pannier racks from Outback Motor Tech that are going to go there. They'll replace the passenger foot pegs, which with my size, my butt's here anyway. So passenger foot pegs were already a joke. It'll swap those out, put nice pannier racks here, and it'll be the same bags that I've got on the Africa Twin. Last bit to mention is exhaust, but that's going to be a ways down the road because I don't really want to spend any money on it. The interesting thing is that a lot of people talk about how stock these things will just melt your turn signals and stuff, so I don't know if that was something that they would address for this year, so 2019. And the only thing wrong with this at all, I mean, it's in really nice condition. Only thing wrong at all is that one of the previous owner's pants melted to the exhaust. It doesn't seem like that's a too big of a deal or that rare for this bike, so not too concerned. Mostly just about getting to know it a little bit. The few times I picked up the front, it is definitely a different beast than the 650. So it's going to take a little getting used to, but I felt the same way with the Africa Twin when I got it, because I had only been riding the 650L for 2-3 years. I had a Kawasaki Concourse, but that thing I barely ever rode it. So when I got on the Africa Twin and then I went off-road on it, I really felt, man, what are you doing with 100 horsepower out here? But I've since got used to it, and now I can ride that thing pretty much however I want. So I'm sure the same process will be here as well with the KTM. Hopefully you can really see the error here. Kind of defeats the purpose if they're supposed to save your hands and levers when your hands and levers are hanging out below the protective plastic. These are small prices to pay. So, keys down here, kind of whack. But I kind of like not having to get in there with my fingers and everything. It's just right here. Filler caps behind me, if you didn't know that. Kind of a weird motorcycle in that way. So, it's got 2 traction modes. There's one is the street mode, 2 is the off-road mode, and then there's the TC traction control light. You can turn it off if you hold this button. And then this down here, Pinky looks broken, these gloves. Down in there is the ABS light, and those are really warning lights. So when everything's working properly, traction control's on, ABS is on, there's no lights. So right now it's basically saying everything's off because you haven't rolled so that we can initiate the systems. So here you go, I rolled, lights all came off. It's in off-road mode, which makes me wonder if this thing has the off-road dongle, because typically it would reset to on-road. So that could be nice. Maybe it already has the dongle. Haven't even looked at that. Something else it's kind of fancy this thing has is a quick shifter, meaning clutchless up and downshifting. Kind of something I didn't really think I'd ever need, but I'm not going to turn it down. So, I've been up here before. It's the route out of here. Okay, so I'm in off-road mode. I'm going to turn it on to on-road mode. I don't think it'll do it while I have throttle on. We're just checking. Nope. So it tried, and then it stopped trying because I didn't let off the throttle. So if I let off the throttle, okay, switched over to road mode. And road mode has its own traction control settings and its own ABS settings, as far as I could tell. If you're curious, first gear is no problem. In fact, I just had traction control take over there. Second gear for wheelies. Yeah, I mean, this thing just casually, the traction control is what's limiting me. So actually I wonder if it has a wheelie limiter on road. But anyway, yeah, she's got plenty of power. Definitely still feeling it out, but you know, here's third gear, 40, 50, 60, she'll move. And then what's also very strange is full-on power upshifts or downshifts. You don't power downshift. But power upshifts are weird. So I'm not going to let off the throttle, not going to touch the clutch, just yanked up on the on the shifter. Definitely kind of a weird feeling. Not sure I'm going to use it all that often, but if I'm screwing around with something on my helmet or whatever and I need to shift, at least I can. The engine definitely has some power. It's certainly more than the XRL does. The nice thing is that it seems to be pretty linear. Generally, you don't feel like you're kind of hitting that end and then you've got more throttle. Like if you give it more throttle, it's got more to give, which is kind of nice. The XRL is pretty much power limited. So when you say go and it's going as hard as it can and you twist another quarter of your throttle in there, it doesn't do anything. So that's going to take some getting used to. Also, noticing they did a really good job. This fuel injection does not do a really rough cutoff or start rough again. That's something that I was a little bit concerned about because the Africa Twin does that, and that definitely affects how you ride. I think that's ultimately why I burnt the clutch out, because when you're riding off-road, you can't be jerked around by on-off throttles, so you tend to clutch a little bit. So every time you start with the throttle again, you kind of ease into it with the clutch, and I just got into the habit of doing that subtly, and it destroyed my clutch. So pulls up to the top end pretty good. That was 80. Let's see, I just upshifted once, so if I go back down, this is the gear I was just in, I hit 80. So if I go downshift 1, 2, 3 downshifts. Okay, so I was in 4th gear at 80, and I didn't have much more to go. That was about maxed out, but that's still a whole lot more than you get out of the XRL, that's for sure. So definitely just feeling it out still. By no means am I claiming to be used to the bike or really good at riding it or anything even. Just mapping it out. But it is nice that you can just get going. So here's top gear, 60. There, if I just hit 75, this is what it looks like on the freeway. Smooth. Engine's really smooth. I'm glad that I held out for something 2019 or newer. They added a second balancer shaft up in the head, and supposedly that really made a difference in vibration on the highway. And honestly, I'm impressed. Like, compared that to the Thumper, this thing is tame vibration wise. Definitely good. Yeah, no complaints there. Something nice that this thing has is a slipper clutch. So if you don't know what that means, it means that when you downshift and your rear wheel is spinning faster than the engine, the clutch actually kind of slips itself. So when the rear wheel spins faster than the engine, like this, downshift, and I let go, right there, as the engine has to match the rear wheel speed, the clutch loosens a little bit, and that prevents over revving your engine. If you, let's say you were in 3rd gear and you were almost maxed out RPM wise, you downshift, and that prevents you from overclocking the engine in 2nd if you just downshifted, say, using the quick shifter. So it's kind of it's been around for a while, but it's definitely becoming more and more popular. But it does not affect torque delivery in acceleration under engine power. So I wasn't sure about that. I looked into it the other day, so pretty interesting. With the stock exhaust on here, it's pretty quiet overall. I mean, relatively. Definitely hear more engine noise. There's a lot more junk going on in this thing than there is the 650, which I'm not a huge fan of a lot of things going on, but I kind of wanted the extra power that I couldn't get out of the 650. Brakes feel amazing. These things are powerful, touchy and powerful. I think probably best brakes on any bike I've owned. Let's see, don't really have a ton of other first impressions. You probably want to see me riding some dirt. If that sun continues to peek out, we might stay out longer, but it is chilly out here. So switch over to off-road mode. Hold this for 5 seconds. If I can even touch the button. Can't see because these gloves. You know how much I love gloves. And then even the ABS button is a real button, so apparently you can shut that off too. I haven't even tried. Alright, so now everything's off. Full off-road mode. Raw power. No help. Definitely kind of it doesn't feel that, I don't know how to say it right, but it doesn't feel like it's scary. Like, I kind of imagined it as it's gonna be, kicks out the rear easily enough. I kind of imagined it like it was gonna be super stressful to learn how to ride it. So far it's been pretty mellow, pretty tame. It's not saying it won't take off if you ask it to, but I haven't had any issues. So what happens if I switch to traction control off-road mode? Nice. Okay, so ABS stays off, traction control stays off. I mean, the power on this thing is just... You see how at a moment's notice I could just ask for double what I'm getting, and that's what's new. That's really what is different between this and the XRL. Is usually you're riding at that 70% power, and this, like just a wheelie like this, I feel like I could just keep going and going and going and going and going, and it just has more to give. And third gear, same deal. Everything seems to be working flawlessly, so we'll just keep at it, slowly get used to it, and before we know it, I'll probably be doing a BDR on this thing. Yeah, if you guys are looking for one of these, a couple things to note. I am 6'5" and almost 300 pounds. So when I say this thing will scoot, that's with me on it. If you weigh less than 200 pounds, yeah, I don't really see a point. This is kind of overkill. You're to the point where you can't really have more fun because you have more power. And I feel like it might be borderline too much power just generally for anybody. But yeah, if you're less than 200 pounds, you really should look at the KTM EXC500, the CRF 450 RL. But as far as a single cylinder dirt bike, this is as fast as they come. And yeah, I just don't see a point for a lot of people. Like I said, in my case, it fits me pretty good. I don't feel like I'm out of place on this thing necessarily. It's got a really rigid feel. Wow. The XRL wiggles its tail, and this does not. That's funny. So this is top gear, pinned. Yeah, pulling all the way up. Let's see if we can hit 75. What kind of RPMs are we at 75? 5,300 RPM. That is pretty high. And I don't know if I'd be cruising all day at 70 on this thing. Okay, here we are on the dirt roads, and I've been out here for another hour or so, and I gotta say, I think they may have just about got this right. This thing, it feels just the right amount of crazy wild and also under control. When I have the traction control off, I can kick the rear out just about any time, case in point. And then at the same time, the ABS is a separate setting, so if I'm not really looking to do any crazy brake skids, like rear brake sliding, which, you know, you kind of have to do that if you're on a BDR or something and you're likely to come up on something quick, but the rear brake on this thing is pretty touchy, so unless I'm really in like full off-road riding mode in my head, it's kind of nice to have ABS back there, and it's simple to turn on and off. It's just a couple, 10 seconds and you're done. But yeah, I'm warming up to this thing. I definitely felt at first like, oh man, this could be, oh man, it's just got so much. Got it. I mean, it's not really power limiting your wheelies, it's traction limited. Right there, I'm breaking loose. I don't even know what gear I'm in, but it's just like, hey, yeah, you want to go 1,000? Let's go! And I think the tires on these are TKC 80s. You know, the ubiquitous adventure rider tire. So far, they seem to be doing all right. Nothing really that's put them through their paces, but they're tracking on the gravel okay. But bike overall, yeah, definitely warming up to it already after this one ride, and I think it's only going to be a matter of time until I'm comfortable on it in the way that I'm comfortable on my other bikes, so that's good. Also, I had to adjust this clutch the way it was because I always keep 2 fingers on the bars, right? So 2 fingers, and then I operate the clutch with 2 fingers. But what was happening was the clutch was adjusted such that even with it pulled into my other, you can't get the full travel, and it was adjusted so that even without pulling it all the way in, it was still engaged just enough for the sensor in the engine to think I was trying to do a quick shift. So basically what that amounts to is I would pull the clutch in, downshift, and the engine would rev match for me, and I do not like that. So for a second I thought that was actually like something that the bike just did, regardless of whether you used a clutch in your shift. But it turns out, no, I had the clutch adjusted weird. So now it feels much more natural. Like when I downshift that way, it feels like I expect it to. It doesn't do any weird rev matching, but then you can do it like that, and of course that feels super unnatural anyway, but at least it does it. So yeah, this thing's all squirrely. When it gets to dirt riding, this thing is gonna eat up some big old miles. It's gonna throw rooster tails for miles. Definitely a bigger engine than the 650. But it seems to be completely tame until you ask. I mean, like this right here, I have no problem just relaxing, driving around, putting around. But when you tell it you're ready, yeah. Oh, that rear ABS. See, that's wacky. I'm used to my fight or flight instinct on a dirt bike is based on the XRL. So when I say, ooh, slide that rear, it goes, sorry, your ABS is engaged. I don't know, we'll see. But I am enjoying the traction control off. I thought that I'd ride it around for a while with it on, but really, it's just not my style. I like to feel the whole power and what the engine's doing to the rear wheel. One thing I will complain about here are these stock KTM mirrors. Do you know how irritated I would be if I bought this thing new and these mirrors cannot hold their position? For one thing, they were installed left to right, right to left. I mean, I can't believe nobody noticed that. But it's alright, John. You only rode it a little bit. But aside from that, I can't believe that the mirrors will not stay. I mean, this thing has never even shown me the road behind me. It's basically a useless piece of glass. I adjusted them about 1,700 times, and then finally I just said, oh, screw it. I'll turn my head around. It's less work. But yeah, I mean, those mirrors are a complete joke. I cannot believe that came on a bike that cost 13 grand. So this is idle speed, first gear. 7 miles per hour. So that should give you a pretty good indication. If you're doing a lot of real slow speed, this thing is not built for that. One nice thing though, in comparison to the XRL, this thing is geared better, for sure. Not only does it have a 6th gear, which is obviously better, but the gap between first and second is now a much more reasonable gap, and then it means that second gear comes into effect earlier, and then because of the rev limit on this thing, second gear is actually a pretty good powerhouse gear. So here's second, and I feel like I could ride it down low, 15, and from 15, you know, it'll speed right up. Slow down again. Here's 15. So even right off idle, this thing does have plenty of torque, and you know, there's kicking the rear out like that from 20. Just so it's definitely capable in second down at the 15 to 20 miles an hour speed. But the nice thing is, with the rev limiter the way it is, that means you're good up to 40. So most off-road trails, second gear is going to satisfy for anything kind of tighter. Anything real tight, obviously, would be in first, but I'm enjoying the better spread between the gears so far. And I'm definitely enjoying a sixth gear. There is no doubt that was long past needed. This video is probably all over the place because I've been recording a little bit here, a little bit there, and honestly, still forming my opinions. But the more I sit on it, the more I think I understand what the beast is doing. And I think it's gonna be a good mix for me. On my way home, it'll just be a bunch of boring pavement, so I'll probably check out here. Thanks for watching, guys. There's more interesting content to come. Stay tuned. Later!